All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Ullman. We've got the UFC 309 preview. It is quite the fight week we have. We have obviously the massive boxing match tomorrow night, but we also have UFC 309, the return of Jon Jones, the long-awaited return of Jon Jones, and the even longer-awaited return of Stipe Miocic. This is finally the heavyweight fight we're getting. It was supposed to happen last year around this time. Obviously, Jones tore his pec, and so he was out for a while. And we're finally getting it. And we're getting it in Madison Square Garden. And we have a fantastic co-main event and a really good card top to bottom, actually. Obviously, we're going to see Bo Nickel and some other guys that we'll talk about. But let's start with Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. What is the path to victory for both these guys? And what is the context around this? So I dropped a YouTube video last week about Stipe Miocic and basically just the narrative around this fight. And I was frustrated with the narrative around this fight. So last week I was listening to Ariel and he said it's 50-50. And I thought about this. I'm like, people haven't even considered the fact that Stipe Miocic could win this fight. The odds, when I did that video last week, minus 725 for Jon Jones, plus 450 for Stipe. And as I look at ESPN right now, they're the same exact thing. Those are crazy, crazy odds. And I think the narrative has just been messed up. Okay, and in that video, I got into a lot of stats and a lot of things. But basically what I want to share is this. They've both had a lot of time off. Okay? You can say Jon Jones fought, about over a year and a half ago against Cyril Gane. Fantastic win. He's only in there for 2 minutes. And if you take those 2 minutes out, they've been out of the octagon for about the same amount of time, right? So, and obviously, heavyweight age, people are like, Stipe is way too old. We've seen guys win championships at this age, okay? In these heavier weight divisions, it does not matter as much. So, the goal of that video wasn't necessarily to pick Stipe to win the fight or wasn't anything like that. The goal was to say, hey, this is a real fight and a guy who has a real chance. And by the way, he's the heavyweight GOAT, right? This is a guy who is proven, who, yes, he's taken time off, but at this point in the career, that could help him. And we're not going to act like Jon Jones is this extremely active guy either, because he's not. Currently, the press conference is going on for this. I'm going to watch that after this video. But these are two inactive heavyweights. And for Jon Jones, obviously only his second fight at heavyweight. Right? So let's not lock this in for Jon Jones. I'll give my predictions at the end of this on what I believe will happen. But first, the keys for both guys is this. Jon Jones, leg kicks early. He did it against Cyril Gane. He dominated the pressure. He pressured the crap out of Cyril Gane. And about a minute in or a minute and a half in, he took him down. But the reason he was able to take him down wasn't because of striking. It was because of leg kicks. He used his legs very smartly to be able to close the gap and then shoot that takedown. Jon Jones' path to victory is very clear, and it's to take down Stipe Miocic. If he can do that, he's going to be in a really good spot. What we have to see is early, how does he get there? And I think the same exact way that he got there against Cyril Gane is the way he has to do it in this fight. Pressure early and leg kicks. Those two things are massive for Jon Jones. If he can do that, I think we're going to see an early takedown, and that can significantly hinder the fight. Now, this is another reason I'm talking about why Stipe has a chance, is even if Jones gets a takedown, we've seen Stipe, how about that second Cormier fight? Stipe was down big, he was getting rattled, and he came back and won by TKO. This is a guy who can go 5 rounds. He has more experience going 5 rounds, and stamina is not really an issue for this guy. Okay, so keep an eye on that. For Stipe, how does he win? He has to keep it close, he has to keep it in the clinch, and he has to keep striking. Frankly, he's a very powerful guy. Not necessarily a guy that's a one-and-done knockout power, especially in a fight like this. And so he's going to have to wear down Jon Jones. And frankly, in order to do that, he can't get taken down more than once, I would say, in this fight. I don't see him getting up from a takedown, and I really would worry if I see him get taken down, say the first 2 rounds, once in each round. automatically he's in a really bad situation, somewhere that he does not want to be. So it's a fantastic fight. This is a heavyweight fight. This is a real fight. And I would encourage you, if you've just sat back in the last couple months as people have mentioned this fight, if you've been in the area of people that have just said, of course John wins this fight, I would ask you politely to re-examine that. I think this is a very real fight, and a fight that Stipe could absolutely win. Okay, so who am I picking in this fight? I'm going to pick Jon Jones. I think it's the safe bet here. I would not bet on this fight, honestly. I think it's that close. I give it about 60-40 Jon Jones. But the way people have talked about it, they've given it like 80-20, 90-10. I give it 60-40 Jones. I think he's able to close the gap, and I think he gets a takedown in the first round. He looks a lot better this fight. His first fight at heavyweight, he was big. I mean, he was big, but big in the belly. He's not that way. I mean, we saw him yesterday. He looks really good. The physique looks quite good. Okay, he looks like a real built heavyweight now. Doesn't quite look like the Ngannou that beat Stipe Miocic in his last fight. But he looks a lot closer to that type of figure. So keep an eye on that. And certainly keep an eye on the physique of Stipe, how he looks. Especially at this age. But I'm picking Jon Jones. I think he gets the takedown. I think if he can get 2 takedowns, I think that's the magic number. If he can get 2 takedowns, one in each of the first 2 rounds, I think he can win the striking matchup then. Stipe is a good striker. He's not the most precise striker. Okay, he's not the guy who's just going to pick you apart with strikes. But he's a high volume guy, and he's a high landing guy. They're just not all big strikes. So I think Jon, when he gets a couple takedowns, he can dominate the fight and do it. So I'm picking Jon Jones in that fight. Listen, minus 725, absolutely ridiculous. That is so disrespectful to a guy in Stipe Miocic, who, I mean, the last fight was a loss, but Francis Ngannou's a dog, and we take that Francis Ngannou over the current Jon Jones, I think. So there's no reason to think that Stipe Miocic cannot hang with and beat Jon Jones. There's absolutely no reason to think that. He's got more experience at heavyweight. He's got more experience going longer in fights. He's fought the same kind of caliber, if not better, guys than Jon Jones. There's plenty of reasons he can win this fight. So now the question is, at heavyweight, now what happens? Heavyweight, ever since the Jones injury, has been an absolute disaster. We've got a guy in Tom Aspinall who, frankly, is the closest thing that we have in this sport right now to Alex Pereira. Quick knockouts, domination, decisive victories. And so you've got that guy who Jones is, can we say running scared from? Probably, right? Running from, doesn't want that. Jones is all of a sudden this week saying he wants fun fights. He's mentioned Alex Pereira. He's even mentioned a name like Derek Lewis. Even mentioned giving up the belt to fight fights like that. Says that those are the only fights that he wants, and that he just has to see if Dana would allow that to happen, which, if John wants it, I'm sure Dana would let it happen, right? But this is such an interesting situation. Obviously, in the rest of the heavyweight division, we don't have anyone that's knocking on the door right now. So it's Aspinall, or it's Pereira, or someone like Derek Lewis, maybe in a fun fight if Jon Jones gets his way. But it sounds like he's okay with vacating, which is a really interesting situation. What he did do is make a comment, and he's tried. I've been on both sides of the issue. So there's the big issue is, should Jon Jones have to fight Aspinall if he fights once more, or should he for his legacy or whatnot? And I found myself on both sides of the issue. And at the end of the day, every time I've compared it to Canelo Alvarez, right? Canelo's not taking the fights that we would want to see right now. He's not taking the Benavidez fights. He's not taking none of that. But you can't necessarily fault him for that, because he's taken all those fights his entire life. Here's what I'll say with Jon Jones. If Canelo fights Benavidez and beats him, I don't think that does much. I love Benavidez. He's a fantastic fighter. I don't think he's an all-time great. Right? And I don't think that in 20 years, Canelo beating Benavidez does that much. John made the same argument for himself and said, beating Tom Aspinall, now you guys think it's big, but how would that help my legacy? Now let's talk about John Jones' legacy. This is not a crazy good legacy. Daniel Cormier is a good fighter, right? Absolutely. He's fought good fighters. He's beat good champions. But this isn't a crazy, crazy legacy. And by the way, you want to talk about legacies? We're seeing guys currently set up really good legacies. Okay? So, let's look at Ilia Topuria. He's fought 2 championship fights. Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway. That's a freaking legacy. That's a legacy. John Jones, when we look back, what will his legacy be? And so ask yourself this. In 20 years, and now the big discussion is, what is Tom Aspinall? Is he the real deal? Ask yourself this, in 20 years, let's say Jones beats Aspinall, and then we look back in 20 years, what was Tom Aspinall's career? In my opinion, it's great. Even if he loses to John Jones. This is monumental. This is crazy, the stuff we're seeing Tom Aspinall do right now. This is Alex Pereira type of domination, guys. Think about it. The Pavlovich fight, the Blades fight. I mean, this is quick work of really, really good heavyweights. In my opinion, Tom Aspinall will retire as an all-time heavyweight great. And frankly, I think he has a chance of going ahead of Stipe. Tom Aspinall could be the heavyweight GOAT, and if not, he could be number 2 or 3. I don't want to hear that win would not be a huge stamp on the resume for John Jones, because it would be. Tom Aspinall's the real deal. This isn't just a current UFC, oh, you got to fight the next guy. No, Tom Aspinall's the real deal. People want to see this fight, and so that angered me when I heard John Jones say that, because Aspinall's a dog. And in 20 years, we're going to say, that's a dog. That's a household name, Tommy Aspinall. It is, and I understand it. Because the current combat sport, right, we're in a weekend where we have Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, and all these people are joining combat sports. Tom Aspinall's name doesn't do that right now. I completely understand that. I think it will. I think he'll get there. I think he's that good. So, it'll be interesting to see. Probably more interesting than the fight itself will be what takes place in the octagon. I mean, we'll probably remember the fight, but we'll probably more so remember what happened after. Does Stipe Miocic retire? It certainly seems like he does, right? If Stipe wins, does he retire with the belt? Does he fight again? For John Jones, does he retire? It certainly seems like he's not going to have it sounds like he won't have a decisive retirement. Unless he gets a decisive answer from Dana about getting these fun fights before the fight, it doesn't seem like we'll have a decisive retirement from John Jones. So I think that's out of the picture. But who does John Jones call out? What does he say? I mean, this is going to be good. Not very often you have 2 fighters of this caliber making these big of decisions about retirement and about who's next and all of those things. This is fantastic. How about the co-main event? Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. Yes, you heard that right. Michael Chandler is fighting, and it's not against Conor McGregor. It's against Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is minus 265, and Mike Chandler plus 215. He finally got tired of waiting and said, okay, I'll go get a fight. I'll go get a co-main event against Charles Oliveira at MSG, and then I'll be right there. That fight's dead, isn't it? I mean, the fight feels dead. I don't know if that fight will happen. At this point, if I had to guess, I would say no. But I think Chandler probably made the right decision. He's here. He got a nice training camp in. He's been training this whole time, I think. But this is a great fight. Obviously, the second time these guys have fought. And if you haven't watched the first time, you should watch it again and again and again and again and again. You should watch it 10 or 20 or 30 times before they fight, because it was so good and it was so action-packed. And Michael Chandler came out hot, as he always does. And it looked like he was going to get the win over Charles. It looked like he was going to submit Charles Oliveira. And then Charles turned it around, finished the first round on top, and got to his position. And then Charles Oliveira finishes Michael Chandler in the second round. Oh my goodness. What a fantastic fight. An all-time great fight to go back and watch. Michael Chandler, obviously so exciting. So good at what he does. And Charles, their styles is just such an interesting clash between these two. It's insane. I mean, Charles, one of the great submission artists we've seen in the sport, maybe the greatest. And Chandler can get a submission, and Chandler's just so hot out of the box. And so you watch it, and you're like, oh, Chandler, what are you doing? That's Charles Oliveira. You cannot give up your back. That's a bad position. Everything you do is so bad, but then he's always in it. He's always in it. And he's always that far away from finishing a fight. Both of these guys are. There's no way this fight goes the distance. I think they probably have it right at Charles winning at minus 265. I'm picking Charles Oliveira to win. I think he gets it done by submission this time. And I'm not doing that because of the time off for Chandler or anything like that. I think this will be a banger fight. If Michael Chandler goes out there and knocks him out in 30 seconds, wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, right? I have no idea what to expect from this fight. I think Charles, again, is the safe pick here, but another fight that I probably wouldn't bet on because I'm not that confident on it. But just such an interesting clash of the styles between these two. Obviously, Charles, the more precise, technical, patient one of the bunch, whereas Chandler's just going to run straight at you. But listen, I mean, you look at a guy like Arman Tsarukyan, who is much more precise than Chandler, and just a better fighter as a whole than Chandler. Even Arman made some mistakes in that fight and nearly got submitted because of it. Now, to ask yourself this, if Arman can't go 3 rounds without making a mistake, why would Michael Chandler, right? And Charles could make the mistake and Mike could do it, right? But he's going to make a mistake. There's no way this fight goes the distance. He's got to make a mistake. And Charles, there's no one better at capitalizing from mistakes than Charles Oliveira. What does Charles have to do? He's got to stay away from the early onslaught, without a doubt, right? Michael's going to come in hot. He's going to do some crazy things off the bat, and Charles just has to stay patient. And it might look weird. He's got to back up quickly. Quickly get away from this guy. You don't have to stay in there and trade early. There's absolutely no reason to. It's way too dangerous. Get away. Run away if you have to. But stay away from that early onslaught. Almost lost in the first fight between them because of it. Listen, we have no clue who's going to win this fight. Charles is the favorite, but this fight could be determined in 25 seconds. Like, it's going to be so awesome. And no blinking allowed because you might miss something. Again, I'm picking Charles. I'm going to go with a second-round submission for Charles Oliveira. But this is, if you're looking at the clashing of styles, I can't think of a better fight, honestly, right now. When you talk about the clashing of two different styles, and what's so good about Charles is you get all these UFC fans who just absolutely hate wrestling, and Charles Oliveira is their favorite fighter. That just shows how exciting Charles is on the ground. It's so impressive. I loved his fight against Arman. I loved his first fight against Chandler, and just an opportunity, again, for him to do some really good things. And then the picture at 155. What happens here? Right, so Islam and Arman. Do we have a date for that? I think the move is probably 311 in Los Angeles. I can't see. Otherwise, I mean, they wouldn't go to Australia, so otherwise they have to wait till 313 or beyond, which I think would be too far. But I don't know what Islam's injury is looking like at this point, but I would guess UFC 311 would be the target for that. And so, listen, Arman obviously more than deserving of that. But now we're talking about, let's just say Islam comes out. I'm going to pick Arman in that fight, but let's say Islam comes out the champion. Now we're talking, I mean, that's a January date, so we're talking at least half a year. Potentially in Abu Dhabi. I don't know the exact date they're looking at for Abu Dhabi, but potentially an Abu Dhabi date over the summer or early fall. So, and that's when Islam would defend again. And the only guy who would jump that realistically would be Ilia Topuria, but that's not going to happen because he still has to fight Volk. And then Diego Lopez, you would imagine. And even after that, I doubt Dana wants him to move up that quickly. Dana does not like that stuff. So Charles is next in line with a win. And honestly, Michael Chandler's probably next in line with a win. If Michael Chandler could win this fight, I don't see him getting jumped by anyone. I mean, Gaethje still hasn't no idea when Gaethje's coming back. And then Poirier is just taking place in those fun fights, it seems like. And then after that, Dan Hooker, I mean, I love Dan, but don't need to see him and Islam go at it. So the winner of this fight, I think, gets the title shot. I think that's the picture. And then the loss for either guy, I think they probably just have a fun fight with either Gaethje or Poirier or Hooker. I mean, there's been talks about that tournament that they want to do at 155 that Poirier's been trying to pitch to Dana. So we'll see exactly what happens there. But I think it's safe to say that the winner gets a title shot. They will have to wait for a while. And obviously for Chandler, I mean, obviously it's a 155 event. So the winner obviously will probably be called out by Conor McGregor. And so we'll have to go through that first. If that falls through, you're getting a title shot, right? Surely McGregor will tweet something out. And if Chandler wins, I mean, certainly Chandler would rather have the McGregor fight still than the Islam fight, right? You would think so. For Oliveira, there'd be a big audience for that fight. And there's been a little bit of talk about it. But I don't know. That's an interesting one. I don't know if the UFC fans would like that. Would like those two guys facing off. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. If Chandler wins, the biggest move for Chandler would be if Chandler wins and McGregor just says nothing. Honestly, that's the best thing McGregor can do is just say nothing if Chandler wins. Because that would make Chandler so furious. So it'll be interesting if Chandler does win, what he says on the mic. Does he go straight for Islam? You would think he, out of not wanting to be embarrassed, you would think he would say, Islam, where's my title shot, right? But he wants Conor, right? He wants the payday. There's no doubt about that. So that's the co-main event. I'm picking Charles Oliveira in that one. And then you've got the third fight, a middleweight bout. Bo Nickel. He is minus 1,300 against Paul Craig, who's plus 700 in this fight. This is a fantastic environment for Bo Nickel in this fight, by the way. He doesn't fight much for a young guy, right? We haven't seen him in there a lot. He enjoys taking time off and hunting and doing all those things. And he mentioned that 47 should be there. Apparently, Trump told Bo Nickel that he would be at this event multiple times. So we'll see if that turns out. But Bo Nickel should win easily. It's by far his toughest test yet, right? Cody Brundage at UFC 300, and then it was Val Woodburn, I think, at 291 before that. So he's taken a lot of time off. I mean, he's gone 291, 300, 309. So every 9 pay-per-views, which is a lot of time off for a guy who's this young yet. But pure domination. Again, hoping to see more wrestling in this fight. We said this in every fight. Hoping to see more wrestling. But the striking looks really good. The striking does look really good. We saw that, especially against Val Woodburn. Looked really good. Brundage worked him a little harder, and I think Paul Craig will work him a little harder yet, but certainly not hard enough. At middleweight, what's the picture there? He's not in the rankings yet, but you would imagine he's close. And then, obviously, he's an eye. Keep an eye on him. You've got Khamzat Chimaev, who's fighting there, and that feels like the big one, right? But then at the top, you've got Duplessis, Strickland, Adesanya. But at this rate, it's still going to be a little while yet, right? It's still going to be a little while if he's taking this much time off. But the big one is Bo Nickel, Khamzat Chimaev, right? Isn't that one of the great fights that we have? And by the time that happens, it could be a light heavyweight fight, honestly, which would be okay. But I forget which one of them. I think it was probably Bo. Mentioned that he would want to do that at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. At some point, obviously, we don't even know if Khamzat Chimaev can fight in the U.S. So, a lot of things to figure out before we get that. We got Mauricio Ruffy's on this card, minus 950, part of the Fighting Nerds. We've got a nerd on this card. Chris Weidman is on the prelims. He's plus 100. His last fight was that odd fight in Atlantic City. Who was that against? That was against Silva, where he got the victory. That was one of the odder things we've seen. And then Jim Miller, back from UFC 300, off of the loss to, was it Bobby Green last? I believe so. Yes. Lost to, King Green. Got the name wrong. King Green now. At the time it was Bobby Green. It is now King Green. But Jim Miller could be another retirement that we see on this card. It'd probably be, it seems like the right place to do it, right? MSG, I think he can continue to be on these big cards. He was an Apex, he was an Apex guy. He was an Apex guy for a while. And now Dana back-to-back has got him on UFC 300 and now UFC 309 at MSG. So, obviously some respect for what Jim Miller's done. He's a savage. He was all bloodied up. He actually fought really well against King Green in that fight, by the way. But certainly there's no more title run in there for him, unfortunately. And then the last guy that I wanted to name, how about Basil Hafez? He is the underdog in this fight. But I highlighted him earlier this year when he was fighting Mickey Gall. And he got a victory. It was a decision win. But I highlighted him because I kind of told his whole backstory and how he grew up and kind of how he got to the UFC. And so I'll probably talk more about that on the post show if he ends up winning this. But he came into the UFC short notice against JDM and went to a decision with him, a close decision. He won a round, actually, a lot of people said. So this is a real fighter. And that was 2023 summertime JDM. So this isn't a bummy young JDM. That was the fresh JDM right there, and he made him work for it. So keep an eye on that guy. And then he beat Mickey Gall. Again, he didn't get the knock on that fight. He looked really, really good. And by the way, a really fun fight style. Michael Chandler-esque, if you will. He was getting after it, and he had the stamina for it, which was really interesting. But down the card, that's the fights we have. So the legend of Bo Nickel will continue. He's going to get probably we'll say a first round finish. We'll say a first round finish by knockout. Paul Craig he's going down. And then Charles, I'm picking by second round submission. And then John Jones. I'm going to pick John. I'm changing a little bit. I'm going to pick John by, we'll say TKO in the fourth round. TKO in the fourth round for John Jones. He beats Stipe Miocic, but do not count this guy out. I cannot stress it enough. Do not count him out. It's going to be a fantastic fight. I cannot wait for that. It'll be probably Sunday that I will be uploading a post-show recapping all of these fights. I cannot wait for this. I love Madison Square Garden. It always delivers. And John Jones is back. Bruce Buffer will be saying the one, the only in an introduction. He only does it for McGregor and for John Jones, and we're finally getting it back this week. We are finally getting it back. Two of the great American heavyweights will square it off. This is fun. This is fun. And certainly we'll be likely reliving a few careers on Sunday, looking back, whether that be Jones or Miocic or Jim Miller or whoever that might be. We'll certainly probably be doing a little bit of that. But I cannot wait to come back and recap the fights. I cannot wait for this. It's going to be so much fun. What a fight weekend we have. But for now, my name is Austin Ullman, and this is Fight Talk, and I will see you next time.